Hello and welcome. I'm Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UAP, UFO news from everywhere and anywhere. Today, I'd like to start out with an update on what's going on with the disclosure movement. Nancy Mace has been chosen to chair the upcoming UAP hearings. Also, the U.S. Senate has reconvened and will now vote on the new UAP Disclosure Act of 2024. This is not going away, folks. It's time for members of Congress to stand up, take their power back, and vote on this UAP Disclosure Act. Also, Lue Elizondo's book, Imminent, has shot to #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And in Lue Elizondo's book, Imminent, Lue Elizondo alleges that they found an alien implant in one of our service members' bodies. I found this on Reddit, posted by r/aliens. It's a picture of Lue Elizondo being interviewed by Ross Colhart and a close-up of that implant. The heading says, former Pentagon official Lue Elizondo with image of alleged alien implant removed from a U.S. service member who had UAP encounter. The physician said the object tried to run away during the operation. Okay, I'll repeat that again. The physician said the object tried to run away during the operation. So when a surgeon tried to remove this implant from the service member's body, the actual implant tried to evade the surgeon's tools. It actually had movement and conscious movement. So that's the subject of this podcast, implants. A few years ago, the famous author Whitley Strieber, who wrote the book Communion, found an implant in his body and tried to have it removed. It also evaded the surgeon's tools and consciously moved away from the surgeon.
I don't know if it's that they've got time on their hands with a night shift or what.
That it's moving away here.
Really? I mean, I get more notice. I mean, proportionally.
That's Whitley Strieber's back of his head.
I like classes and everything.
I hope I'll be able to see this on the video. I'm fascinated.
All right.
What's wrong with that?
Ooh, look at that white thing.
But see, this will last.
But it goes, I guess it went out under.
But that's the hard part.
It's already moving away.
Exactly.
Wait,
It's actually moving now.
well, he's poking it, but it went under.
It's on the run.
Well, it kind of is, because I can see it just bright as day.
You can see Whitley Strieber saying it's on the run.
Yeah.
See, this isn't uncommon, by the way. Be sure to let the camera see this.
I don't know if you can see it. Let's see.
Now, take a look and be sure.
Let's see.
Because one of
It's
the...
like a little tiny white disc, but it doesn't look odd. I mean, it doesn't look like...
Well, they never do, but the thing is that Roger had such a time with one or two of them, that took him like an hour to catch them, because they would do this. They would move
What's
away
that?
from him.
Gonna nip him out. No, John's being a little persistent here. There is
No,
something
that's
there.
it. I mean, I got a low piece,
Here's some more on here.
which is, that's it. I'm not going to do anymore.
Okay, so they were never able to get the implant out of Whitley Strieber's head. I think that was his ear they were working on, and he decided to keep it in. So I became very interested in these alien implants. So I did a little digging and found out that there had been a Dr. Leir that had been working on these alien implants and studying them for years before he died. This is an article from an online magazine called Avni Ologia. I believe it's a Brazilian online magazine. And the title of this article is Physical Evidence Alien Implant Removals Analysis. Alien Implant Removals and Analysis by Dr. Roger Leir. And here's a series of pictures of different types of implants that Dr. Leir removed from various people. Here's an x-ray of one inside of somebody's back. And you can see that they're not very big. This one is barely larger than a dime. And I'm just going to read certain parts of this article. Dr. Leir passed away on March the 14th, 2014, so about 10 years ago. Leir was a pioneer and one of the world's foremost leaders in the research of physical evidence involving the field of implant phenomena related to extraterrestrial abductions. He and his surgical team performed 17 surgeries on alleged abductees, resulting in the extraction of 13 separate and distinct anomalous objects suspected to be implants. So supposedly the percentage of cases studied is tiny compared to the number of people who could have implants in their bodies and would not have realized it because they did not undergo an X-ray. So these implants supposedly were made out of indestructible matter. And according to studies by Dr. Roger Leir, these implants are at least 100 times harder than any current super reinforced steel. Wow. They can only be cut with a laser and cannot be scratched even with diamonds, the hardest natural material, which undoubtedly determines their hardness scale. There is an interesting detail. When Dr. Roger Leir's team contacted a laser cutting expert, the expert objected to their physical presence during the cutting. Given its hardness, he thought the laser might deflect. Wow. Finally, the object was cut to the team's expectations. So it took a laser to cut one of these implants. In the 16 cases studied by Dr. Leir, there is a biological membrane covering the metal. I guess that accounts for why it seems to have a consciousness or moves on its own. Okay, moving on with the article. This could be a phase in which the inorganic material becomes organic, or it could even be the unique event in the history of medicine where both materials grow from each other. About that. Okay, there's a graphic here of one or two of the implants. Has a real odd shape. Almost looks like a claw. So going on with the article, Dr. Roger Leir studied microscopic bubbles that appear to be inside and on the surface of the implant. It is an oil whose analysis reveals a chemical conformation that prevents the biological body from rejecting metallic substances. Wow, that's highly advanced. The oil prevents infections or even subdues the patient's immune system without creating inflammation. That's unheard of. Some foreign body inside of someone's body and the immune system not rejecting it. That's highly advanced. So apparently these implants give off frequencies, and the frequencies that these implants continuously emit, even after being removed, are typical of communication with deep space. As it refers to a transmission, the implant would be prepared to receive signals with the multiple possibilities that this entails, especially in relation to mind control. Jesus. The origin of these implants reveals a possible ability to travel immense distances in the universe by the intelligences that manufacture them. Under the electron microscope, these bodies present a very complex matrix of carbon nanotubes, much more sophisticated than those currently being investigated to strengthen metals. The key to these implants lies in their retroengineering, as their applications in the surgical field to prevent rejection in transplants would be a great advance for humanity. Amen to that, that's for sure. So here is a picture of Dr. Roger Leir, several different types of ET implants that he has removed. Okay, so the article also goes into the basic characteristics of the implants. And it focuses in on one individual, Ron Noel, who claims that he was kidnapped at 9. He was not operated on by Dr. Leir until he was 49 to remove one of these incredible implants near the bones of his arm. So Ron Noel contacted Dr. Leir, and he was prepared for the operation. When they got there, they took the x-ray, and the object was indeed there. It had not been a mistake. Before undergoing extraction, Dr. Leir performed some scientific experiments to determine the origin of this strange body. The first consisted of determining the length of the object, which was between 2 to 3 millimeters. He then determined its metallic character with an electronegativity meter. The next experiment involved examining the area of skin and muscle above the body, or the implant. Dr. Leir was surprised. Using a 302 nanometer ultraviolet light, a striking C-shaped mark appeared on Ron Noel's arm that had been there all his life without his knowledge. The marks were not visible in natural light. And a curious feature of this case is that Dr. Roger Leir developed a hypothesis based on this last experience. When marks of varying intensity were found on witnesses, Leir stated that the brighter marks were due to recent abductions. So the theory is that these implants were placed in these people by aliens when they were abducted. The marks would be left from abduction to abduction without the witness knowing anything about it. This would mean that Ron Noel, after his abduction experience at the age of 9, would have been abducted numerous times without his knowledge. The last one, according to Dr. Leir, must have been only 2 weeks ago, based on the brightness of the C-shaped mark on his arm. These marks are also sometimes seen on the furniture in the homes of these supposed abductees. The discoveries are made with ultraviolet light wavelengths of 365, 302, and 254. There's a picture of Ron Noel during his surgery on his arm. The next experiment was to measure the radiation from Ron Noel's arm with a Geiger counter. The results were negative. The electromagnetism of the arm was then measured, resulting in a value of 5.5 milligauss, a significant value that is not natural for a human arm. This object generated a continuous magnetic field from within his body. The next experiment was fascinating because they began measuring the radio frequencies of the witness's arm. The experiment resulted in an emission of waves of 137.72926 megahertz and 516.812 gigahertz. Dr. Roger Leir stated that the results were similar to other cases of abductees who had undergone subsequent removal of implants. The frequencies used are similar to those that NASA uses to communicate with satellites and ships. They are also similar to the transmissions made to reach deep space in radio communication experiments such as the one at Arecibo. According to Dr. Roger Leir, the compositions of these implants reflect similarities with meteorite samples found on Earth. He assures that all of this is impossible on a medical level, since the body would have to react and attack these implants, creating serious infections. But this does not happen. The composition, according to Leir, reflects metallurgical anomalies, isotopes that do not exist on Earth, different combinations of crystalline metals and common metals, and highly magnetic iron atoms that are not crystallized. The isotopes found would not be native to Earth. and could not be found naturally in the Earth's biosphere. As for the absence of infection, Leir discovered that there is a layer of biological tissue that appears to grow from within the metal, molding and adapting to the organic environment of the individual's nerve endings. Wow. Apparently, after removal, the implants stop emitting radio waves, but in subsequent experiments in which they were placed back into a bottle of human blood, the implants worked again. And in 2 of the 17 extractions Dr. Leir performed, the implant moved, apparently to make extraction difficult, as if it had the ability to detect an intrusion and move in some way within the host's body. This could be verified in another case by the abductee Whitley Strieber, which I showed earlier. Also, another interesting point is that where would this implant get its energy from? And according to Dr. Leir, from the individual himself, from the energetic reactions of the DNA and the ATP present in his genetics. Jesus, that is highly advanced. Okay, here's several pictures, x-rays of implants inside of somebody's hand. And here are a couple of implants. These seem to be T-shaped. So if these implants emit data or frequency, it can also receive it. And that's kind of scary. What kind of data are these people receiving through their implants? If this data is channeled or relayed to the brain, we could speak of possible induced mind control. And if we talk about biomagnetism, a metallic structure capable of growing a series of tissues inside or outside of it and not cause rejection in the body, that's so impressive. I'm going to show a little bit of a video of Dr. Leir, and he's giving a presentation and showing a video of himself removing the implant from Ron Noel. It's a documentary on the MUFON YouTube channel. So I have to thank the MUFON YouTube channel for the use of this, or clips from the video.
Or a piece of cattle. I don't know how it's influencing my life, my thoughts, my health. I don't want that thing in me if I didn't give them permission to put it in.
The object appears to be in the thumb, and it should be a relatively simple procedure to go in, isolate it, and remove it. Paul is an interesting case. We took a physical examination of his hand and arm. We looked for the telltale marks of the portal of entry. We didn't see any. When the object was removed and we looked at it, you don't really find things in the body that are wrapped with this very tight, sort of grayish, very shiny biological membrane, and then try and take a surgical blade and cut through it with a knife and can't cut it.
It looks like it might be an iron oxide. If we can crush it and get it to very small size, we'll be able to really get to the internal structure more readily.
Okay, I think here they can't crush it. It's so hard.
The object resisted crushing, but an outside layer did flake off. This was put under X-ray diffraction, and the results of the test were curious. They couldn't match it to any of the 65,000 known substances in their computer file.
It's not in our file. I'm not sure what to think about that at the present time. That's as many known substances that we have on the planet as possible.
I'm going to move ahead a bit here.
The object that we removed today contains or is surrounded by the same type of membrane that we have seen in the other objects. I have never seen anything like the membrane which surrounds these objects. It's a very well-organized, shiny, dark membrane which fits very tightly onto the object. And we've also had analysis of this, and It has simple ingredients in it, but you do not find those ingredients in combination anywhere in any medical pathology book.
Yeah, I'm going to move ahead a bit.
Now, we have a new category, which is totally biological. Now, this object was most unusual in the sense that it moved underneath the skin before it was removed.
Okay, so he's talking about here how the implants are able to move on their own and evade extraction.
After I saw it move the first time. And then...
Okay, so I'm going to show a close-up here of the implant actually moving. This is, I have to give you a fair warning, this is really creepy.
Just seemed to appear one day. I do think this is related to the experience of what happened to me.
Well, I tried to trap this thing with a finger after I saw it move the first time. And then as I held it there, I touched it again, and instead of moving back in the direction that it came from, it moved 90 degrees in another direction.
When the doctor was trying to remove it, he was going, this is ridiculous. He said every time he was trying to snip and do things, he was saying, this is just really, really, really odd that I'm having such a hard time with actually getting this out of there, almost like it did not want to leave my body.
It did try to move out of the way, and he had to use a couple of fingers in order to sort of corner it in one spot. And once it was cornered in one spot,
I'm going to move ahead on another
token,
case that he worked on. He removed an implant from somebody's cheek.
Gary went out and got a what's called a field splitter analysis, and in the past we had found that this surrounding soft tissue absolutely has no inflammatory or rejection reaction whatsoever. Now, if we could duplicate the membrane as...
So this is the actual implant, and this is the membrane that it was in.
I've mentioned many times before that surrounds this thing. My God, you could wrap a liver or a kidney or whatever you want in it, and the patient wouldn't have to take things like cyclosporin and other very expensive immunosuppressive agents for the rest of their life. Next.
That's a good point. If we had that technology, we could do heart implants, liver implants without any rejection, without the patient having to take medicine for the rest of their lives to avoid rejection.
You know, in doing research
I'm move up a bit
either surgically
in this presentation.
Or this is not scanning electron.
This is a close-up on an electron microscope of what the implant looks like.
Microscope. Next. And you can see it's almost like looking at the surface of another planet. We can see these striae, these large...
I'm going to move up so that you can see what the end part looks like.
Which looked like it was kind of an organic material.
Here we go.
You know, and you can see again.
That's towards the end, or the tip of the implant.
Internal properties here, you know. And here's a greater magnification shot of the end.
It's really good magnification of the tip of the implant. Yeah, I'm going to move up. I'm going to move up in his presentation where he's answering questions. He does a Q&A, and somebody wants to know whether these are possibly tracking devices.
Well, you know, I started out by just doing the surgical stuff, but this has sort of evolved now into other physical evidence, either of, you know, UFO landing crash sites, or, you know, somebody sees something strange and a piece falls off and it looks weird.
I think this is where they ask him about tracking devices.
Is there any reason other than speculation? Is there speculation on why the implants are put in other than maybe a tracking device? And could it be detrimental to take them out?
Well, that's a good question, and I've been asked that quite frequently. I've been in 42 countries, and I probably have had that question asked in many of them. Now, all I can go by, number one, answering the last part first, is it detrimental? We follow the cases quite closely for the ones that we have extracted, and nobody's really had anything detrimental that happened to them. One case, they thought they had some psychic ability which disappeared, but within 2 months it came back. And also, so far, knock on wood, we've never had anybody had one put back. Now, our tracking devices, or what are they for? I really don't think that they're tracking devices.
So he doesn't believe they're tracking devices. That's interesting. Although that is his opinion, it seems likely that they probably are. That's just my opinion. I'm going to move up a bit here.
Okay, let's try one more question.
Yes, Doctor. You made a strong point about the absence of inflammatory cells. Could you expand upon that and just how rare that would be with objects in the human body?
Okay, it is extremely rare and virtually impossible. You cannot get foreign material inside the human body without having a reaction in the form of inflammation. The body wants to reject or get rid of the object that it's in there. And there's a whole scenario of inflammation with increased blood supply, increased number of white cells, phagocytic development in order to try and remove the object. Finally, it can't be removed. You get fibrosis that goes around the object, such as what happened in pilots that were involved in war actions and had shrapnel that stayed in their body for 20 years. It's there. It's called a chronic inflammatory reaction. It becomes walled off and acts like it's not there.
So it stands to reason that implants that emit data can also receive data, which insinuates the possibility of mind control. And that would be my worry, especially when it comes to service members like the one that Lue Elizondo featured in his book, Imminent. This is concerning because of the possible implications of outside control of our military personnel. If data is channeled or relayed to the brain, we could have possible induced mind control. Also, Dr. Leir proved that these implants all have a membrane or organic tissue surrounding them that kept them from being rejected by the body. If this membrane could ever be duplicated by our own biological scientists, we could be talking about a true revolution in our medical practice. Most noteworthy is that this is real physical evidence, measurable and verifiable. The question that I would have, though, is are those subject to these implants being used as laboratory guinea pigs by the ETs? Finally, the subject of alien implants is part of the uneasiness that characterizes our relationship with the UAP phenomenon, one that is long overdue for demystifying. My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Thanks for listening to my podcast.